Today we're going to be looking at learning target 1F, which is isolating a variable in an equation. Before we start looking at problems, I want to remind you of the golden rule of algebra, which states that whatever you do to one side of an equation, you must do to the other in order to keep the equation in balance. Another reminder is when moving one piece from one side of an equation to the other, you need to use those inverse operations. So addition and subtraction are inverses of each other, multiplication and division are inverses, and also square root and square rooting are inverses of each other. Whenever you're solving for a variable or isolating a variable, if you keep the order of operations in mind, PEMDAS, it will help you in that you begin with the bottom and start working your way back to the top. So always undo the adding and subtracting first, then undo multiplying and dividing, then move on to your exponents, and last do anything that is in parentheses. Let's look at a couple of problems so that we know what we're talking about when it comes to isolating a variable. So looking at this equation, d equals rt, which stands for distance equals rate times time, we want to isolate that r. So we want to get that r all by itself. First thing I notice is that r is being multiplied by t, so I'm going to go ahead and divide by t. Once I do that, the t's cancel out on the right side of the equation, and we're left with d divided by t is equal to that r. Once the r is all by itself and it's isolated, you are done with the equation. Let's look at a second equation. In this case, we're talking about perimeter of a rectangle. Perimeter is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. In this case, we want to isolate w in this equation. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to undo what is being added to that 2w, which is the 2l. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2l from the right side over to the left side. When I do that, it cancels that out on the right, and I'm left with p minus 2l is equal to 2w. My next step is I want to undo all multiplication and division that's next to that w. So since it's being multiplied by 2, I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2. After that, the 2's cancel out on the right side. I'm left with w on the right. It's isolated by itself. And on the left, I have p is p minus 2l divided by 2. At this point, I want to mention that all the steps that we're doing are very similar to what we've been doing to solve for a variable. The only difference here is that none of the variables or numbers necessarily get canceled out. So it may look very complicated, but the steps you're following are the same as the previous 3 learning targets. Let's look at 2 more equations here. Next one, this is your standard form for linear equations. States that ax plus by is equal to c. We want to isolate y. So the first thing I'm going to do is undo all adding and subtracting that's being added to the y. So I'm going to subtract ax to move it from the left side of the equation over to the right side. When I do that, it cancels out on the left, and I'm left with by is equal to c minus ax. Then I want to undo all multiplication and division. So in this case, I'm going to divide by b to get the y by itself. And I'm left that y is equal to c minus ax divided by b. The last equation we're going to look at together is the equation for the area of a triangle. Area equals 1/2 base times height. In this case, we want to isolate h. First thing I'm going to do is I want to get rid of that 1/2, so I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 2 over 1, or just 2. When I do that, I end up with 2 times a is equal to b times h. Next, I'm going to get rid of the b. I want to move that over to the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by b. That gets the h all by itself, and I'm left with 2 times a divided by b is equal to h. Here are a couple of equations for you to practice on your own. The one on the left is for the area of a rectangle, and the equation on the right is for the volume of a cylinder. Try isolating W on the left and H on the right. Pause the video until you have had a chance to try that, as the solutions will be on the next page. For your solutions, on the left side, I want to get that W by itself. So since L is being multiplied by it, I go ahead and divide by L. And I'm left with A divided by L is equal to W. And on the right side, I want to get that H by itself. Since it's being multiplied by both pi and r squared, I can divide by both pi and r squared. And I'm left with V divided by pi r squared is equal to H. We will be practicing this skill on Monday, so make sure that you come ready to work. If you have any questions or want to talk to one of us, make sure you catch us before class, and we'll be happy to iron out any questions you have.